People shouldn't be killed just because they have an opinion or just because they've experienced something supernatural. In 1977, I was driving my HR Holden sedan when I was impacted up the rear by a heavily laden semi-trailer. The only reason I survived was because I'd heeded repeated frantic instructions from a group of entities that were inside my car with me, whose presence I could physically feel as a sort of a pressure as they moved around me. My window was closed on my car, no air conditioning in 1977. My radio was broken in the HR, as everyone who's owned a HR back in those days will know that was common practice. The radio broke. So I put my seatbelt on as per instructions, and seconds later, like within a minute, I was rammed up the rear by this semi-trailer. Now, I told this, there was other things that happened, but I won't go into detail right now. I told this to my Freemason parent, who obviously told it to other Freemason people. I was, cut a long story short, I eventually was kidnapped or abducted and brainwashed and interrogated intensively about my experience. Now, what's happened, I sort of dismissed it along the way because I lived in a Freemason family and you were routinely brainwashed to forget what you'd seen. That's a fact. Possibly because I'm the sort of personality that is anchored in logic. I only attach a memory or take credence in a memory that's linked to something logic, something concrete. I never listen to hearsay and that sort of thing. So I'm essentially intrinsically ground in logic, and I can't be swayed away from that. Myers-Briggs would call me an INTJ. But anyway, what happened since, and I dismiss it because what happened since I didn't think in my wildest dreams would be associated with me experiencing a phenomenon, what people call miracle. But as time went by, I realised that my experience proves essentially that religion is fake. I mean, it's just a construct that the governments have created in order to control people with fears of the unknown. And that's why that's why there's all these rumours about area, whatever it is in America and all that sort of stuff, because the government would prefer you to believe that people are crazy for seeing little green men, but they won't actually investigate or publicise my experience. And there's been a lot of people, if you troll the internet you can find it, there's been a few people, I won't say a lot, a few people that have experienced something similar just before a major accident where they've walked away. Like one lady walked away from a plane crash because she did something that she was told to do. But these are not a miracle from God. These are multiple people. They're a physical entity, and like a physical presence, but they're invisible, essentially invisible. And I can't be tagged as a crazy bitch because the only reason I'm alive today is I put my seatbelt on when they told me to. That's all their message was. Put your seatbelt on. They were yelling and screaming at me in the end because I was ignoring them. And when I turned to look out my driver's window, we have our wheel on the right hand side in Australia. When I turned to look at my driver's window, one of them come in front of, between my face and the closed window, and screamed at me. And so then I realised, well, I had better pay attention. So, as I said, the only reason I'm alive is because I put my seatbelt on. 1977 Australia, there were no seatbelt laws. As a matter of fact, most cars didn't have seatbelts. There were lap-sash seatbelts in the HR, in the front, but there were none in the back. There was just the panic strap that you had in the back. There was no, like, you were deemed a bit of an idiot if you wore your seatbelt, you know. That was the custom. People would poke fun at you if you actually wore your seatbelt in the car. in the 1970s. It was at the end of 1970s, seatbelt laws came in. So when the impact happened, I was sitting on a bench seat. The HR's a bench seat, and the bench seat, because of the seatbelt, I flew forward, and it wasn't. The first thing I remember is the sun visor flap hitting me in the forehead, and I thought, oh, what's that? I had no idea I was in a car accident. And the next thing, my arms flew up beside me, and I thought, what are they doing? And then I come to a rest, sort of thing, and I'd stopped, and obviously my brain was shaken quite a bit because I had no idea what was happening. But my first instinct was to look in the rear vision mirror, and I saw the bull bar, and I realised, oh, okay, I've been hit. And my next instinct was to turn the ignition off because I still had my foot on the clutch and the brake, and I was worried about a petrol leak because I'd been hit up the back. And what had happened is I was shunted 3 or 4 car spaces forward at a stop sign. We'd just come down a hill. There was 3 or 4 cars in front of me. They were waiting to merge into the traffic. They moved off, and I hesitated, and I don't know why, obviously. I hesitated, and I was pushed those spaces that they'd occupied, and I was just a little bit out the front in the oncoming traffic, and somebody abused me as they drove past, and then I don't know whether they realised I was in an accident. But I'd mentioned that. So 1977, 1987, between 77 and 87 there'd been multiple attempts on my life. Like, I won't go into detail, but there'd been multiple attempts on my life, including poisoning and whatever. And for whatever reason, I got through it. In 1987, Freemasons were involved in another incident where I was rammed up the rear, this time by a soil truck. And the Freemason, because all the police were Freemasons in the 70s, 80s and beyond. As long as I've been alive, I was born in 56, all the police were Freemasons. And the judges and the doctors and the lawyers and all that, all the white collar workers. My father's a blue collar worker, he was a Freemason. So they're in there as well. But in 1987, I was rammed up the rear by the soil truck, and I was spun around eventually. I tried to keep the car still, it was fishtailing, and then the subframe was bent, so it was bound to flip. So it flipped 180, and I ended up facing the way it came. I stopped in the dirt verge beside the road, and I felt pressure on the top of the car as if it was being pushed down to stop me. There was one of those steel armor guard railings next to me. You could stick your finger in, that was it, the finger in between the car and the armor guard railing. I didn't hit anything, like I stopped completely at rest. A car that was coming the opposite direction towards me swerved off the road and rammed into the rear end of the armor guard railing behind me and impaled himself on, like his radiator impaled himself on the end. He didn't hit me. The police charged me for negligent driving. I was rammed twice by the soil truck. He hit me once, I was going okay, and hit me again, and that's what caused me to fishtail across the road. So that, in my mind, was an attempt to kill me. That was the 30th of June 1987, at the same time in the Penrith Courthouse, District Court I believe. The men charged with the shootings on Father's Day 1984, Milperra, were being sentenced or having a final hearing in the court on the same day. So I didn't know at the time. I had no idea I'd been written into this particular incident until about 1994, when 3 police officers attempted to arrest me during a Toastmaster meeting in Campbelltown, New South Wales. My truck accident was on between the Campbelltown-Camden Road in New South Wales. Before they put the new overhead bridge, it was the temporary intersection at that new overhead bridge coming off from the MacArthur Bridge at Camden, and I was to go right to Campbelltown, and that's why I was at the stop sign. The 1987 accident was on Catherine Fields Road, near that pub that's along there, some or other. It's just up from there. And then in Then the next major thing was I was pregnant in 1987. In 1988, the child that I was carrying in 1987 was indecently assaulted by a Freemason, my father, who's now dead. And then in 1989, the Freemason police decided they'd defame me as the visual identity or legal identity of the fake murder victim, Leanne Walters, and the evidence proves that that particular person never existed as police described. The original photos in 1984 were the photos of a woman who I believe is Anita Manning. The circumstances and the photographs of Anita in 2014 from Bargain Hunt give a very striking likeness to the mature woman of the teenager that was in the 1984 Sydney newspapers, The Sun and the Mirror. And the particular front page of The Sun, the first day after Father's Day in 1984, had a photo of the woman who I believe is Anita Manning, and she has telltale scar on her throat from whatever that procedure's called. I'd have to look it up because it starts on now. And her current photos that I got off Bargain Hunt, I was just watching on TV, and I took a photo of her for her hairstyle, simply to establish that that was the hairstyle that people wore in those days. And it wasn't till she'd said something later that she said she'd been a really bad girl. She admitted to Tim Wonnacott on TV, like during the Bargain Hunt, that she'd been really a bad teenager, and she said something like she'd expected them to come after her, but they never did. And that's what I heard. That was what aired on there, and I thought nothing of it until later on I examined her photo, realised she has an uneven cheeks that matched the photo from the Mirror in 1984, and the Mirror newspaper was called the Daily Mirror, and that she had the scar in her throat, and that she actually looks like the mature woman of that 1984 photo, and therefore that 1984 photo would have been Anita when she was a teenager in the 60s, something like that, because she probably would have been born in the 1940s or late 30s something. So this is all entwined and complex and complicated, and that's what the Freemasons do. They complicate things, and they use a lot of subterfuge. They put other people in the forefront of the harms that you experience, and they're in the background giving instructions, and then so you're angry at the person in the foreground, but they're really like making the bullets, as they say, while the other person you're talking to is firing them, metaphorically. So basically this whole thing, what I'm trying to get at, and I hope I'll be cutting all this out, what I'm trying to get at is that I think it's about time Hollywood actually did something to expose these acts of terrorism, because my incident is not a single incident in America themselves. The 2014 incident involving Joan Rivers, where she'd mentioned something about Barack Obama and his wife, and then something that was rather controversial and damaging potentially politically damaging. Within 6 weeks she was dead by a criminally negligent action of multiple physicians during a very minor surgery, and they had been negligent, predictably doing things that would have caused her death, multiple things. So to me that's conspiracy to murder. You just look at the evidence. I mean, murderers aren't going to give you an affidavit and said, yes, okay, I killed someone because of this. But you look at a murder, you look at the circumstances, and you look at the evidence, or you look at a death, you look at the circumstances, and you see, well, this looks suspicious, you know. I believe Joan Rivers was killed as an act of terrorism. I believe I'd been surgically raped as an act of terrorism. And I think it's about time, because I can't get my matter in court. Despite the multiplicity of evidence I have, I can't get my matter in court. So I think it's about time Hollywood stepped up to the plate and did some sort of documentary on these things. Ideally, I would like a full-length mini-series to go and cover all the events that have happened, to open people's eyes and force our constitutional democracies to enforce local terrorism for a political cause. I mean, people shouldn't be killed just because they have an opinion or just because they've experienced something supernatural.
Accepted for economics degree as my second choice. The Dean of the University Law School said they're not taking mature students at the moment. Can't help but think it's personal. Never mind, you can always transfer to law after the first year. It feels like some creep's undermining everything I attempt these days. I can't even let myself cry because when I do, I can't breathe. You remember when I had that illegal surgery? Remember I told you I woke up in that illegal surgery? Gotta hurry else I'll be late to Toastmasters. It'll be really fantastic to meet some nice people for a change. See you later.
I'm New South Wales Police Detective Paul Shit for Brain Shields, and we got some intelligence that says you're a bikie hooker and use fake your own death back in 1984.
Are you talking to me?
That you in it?
I can't see it. You'll need to bring it closer. I haven't got my glasses. It looks like me. That's not my name. Shields? Are you Martin's brother? Martin, is this idiot your brother?
No one's gonna believe you here. Show us your ID papers, or else.
What are you talking about? You've got to be kidding! Is this your idea of a joke? Okay, so who put you up to this? Hey, 50. That's when I was raped by those cupcakes. You bastards.
You'll show me respect, you little bitch, or I'll slap you down here and now. If you've got no driver's license on you, Madam Leanne Walters, these blokes are gonna arrest you. You dirty rat C. It'll be long time before yous get any sunlight on your face, you filthy bikie mall whore.
This is my driver's license. I passed it when the RTA was up the road in Lindsay Street, Campbelltown. That was the 29th of August 1973, using my 1st of May 1956 Cooma, New South Wales birth certificate, where I've been registered since 1956 in the same name. The same name you see right there in your hand on my driver's licence. I attended Campbelltown East Primary School since 1962 when I was 6, using the same name. I passed my school certificate at Campbelltown High School in about 1972 when I was 16, under the same name. My first job was with the Government Insurance Office of New South Wales in Elizabeth Street, Sydney, under the same name. I started there in November 1972 and got a tax file number. If you had done what the same government pays you to do, then you would already know that, wouldn't you?
You're right. Me best brothers wrote that. I believe them 'cause they're me mates. Right, ain't it? So you can count on me proving on yous from now on. I reckon one of these days you're gonna slip up, and I'll get you then. No one's gonna give damn about slut like you, Leanne Walters. Every step you take, every move you make, I'll be watching you. You belong to me.
I expect that you'll be arresting whoever it was that's responsible for that book, and I don't care if they're your mates. You can go now.